Hi, my name is Mike Ward. I'm the Global Director of Informa Pharma Insights business. We're here in San Francisco at the Biotech Showcase meeting, which also coincides, or is run alongside the JP Morgan meeting, where the pharma and biotech movers and shakers all get together to, I guess, almost kick off the year. As you can tell in the background, it's the meeting's buzzing. I'm joined now by Chuck Magness, who's the CEO of KPI Therapeutics, which is a Seattle-based company. Chuck, I mean, you're here. One of the things, it's a 2-year-old company, but you've raised $12 million to date. But actually, you're thinking about going public, looking to raise some money.
Absolutely.
What will the use of proceeds paragraph say in your filing document?
Okay, well, thanks, Mike. It's good to be here. We're focused really on two areas. One is autoimmunity and chronic pain. And what's interesting about KPI is, even though it's a pretty early company, is we have clinical stage assets. So we have a phase 2 asset we're working on called dalazatide. It's ready to go into phase 2. And we look to move that forward here later this year. We're also developing out of that same franchise some related molecules for topical applications in dermatology and autoimmune diseases of the eye. And so that's going to be our primary use of proceeds over the next 18 months. Okay, so just to focus on that to start with, so where did you get those assets from initially? So those assets were originally licensed by our sister company Kineta, and have been advanced preclinically. They've now gone into the clinic, and now KPI is taking them. We've also come up with some additional validation on the topical applications, and that's where we really want to focus over the next 12 to 18 months, is bringing these other applications into phase 1, advancing the existing drug forward, and then we also have another program that has been in license but is still preclinical for chronic pain. All of these assets have novel mechanisms of action, and we think can really be potential game changers for these two areas. And so we're very excited about what we think we can do clinically over the next 18 months, and hopefully get into that IPO zone in that period of time in terms of getting some good milestones. Right. Okay. Now, what is the relationship between Kineta, which you were with, and KPI? Right. So Kineta is a major investor in KPI, as are other development partners that we brought into KPI. So it's a kind of a unique semi-virtual model where KPI is leading the development of these programs, but we're using and leveraging the ability of our development partners in the process. And so it allows us to develop these drugs more efficiently, more cost effectively, and ultimately we hope as we get to revenues, then that we'll be more profitable because KPI can stay leaner and more focused on managing these programs through the clinical and commercialization process. So KPI, whereas other sort of startups are usually around an asset or a sort of scientific approach, this is actually more around a commercial approach. It's around getting these assets to commercial. Yeah, absolutely. It's partnering, commercialization. We're trying to move these two platforms forward. Okay, and the two platforms. Do you know how much money you want to raise? Yeah, well, we expect, we're getting ready to raise another round, obviously, this year to enable this. We're looking in the $20 to $30 million range probably for that round, ultimately. And as you said, we've got some money into the company to get to this point, but we need to have larger amounts of capital to enable 2 or 3 different clinical programs we want to enable over the next 18 months. Right. And then the business model is what? I mean, you would take those assets. How far? Because already some of them are already clinical anyway. Right. So for the larger indications, things like lupus and psoriasis, potentially other applications of these same drugs could be in MS and type 1 diabetes. We'd like to commercialize those with a partner, obviously, ultimately, because those are going to be some larger opportunities. We think there's some smaller opportunities around some of the topical applications like atopic dermatitis and perhaps dry eye syndrome in the eye that could be really attractive for a smaller company like KPI to move farther into that process and maybe commercialize on our own ultimately. But so is that because it's just that such small niche audiences? They're a little bit of a niche audience there, and we think those are really attractive developmental options for us that would not need as large of a corporate presence or funding to get to that point. Okay, so those are those two platforms. The use of proceeds, would that also involve
bring in other assets in totally different areas, or will you just add to those franchises?
Right now, we just want to be focused on these assets right now. We do ultimately, as we expect to perhaps partner some of these or get them to a commercialization point, we'll want to look for other assets, and that's a key part of what we're doing, and just kind of scouting for things that we're interested in that happen to be a good fit with our platform, our partnering model, and so forth.
Right, so, okay. And the milestones over the next sort of year or two. I mean, what can we?
Right.
What kind of press releases can I expect to get from KPI?
Well, you should expect to get some notices that we're starting clinical trials, because that's what we're all about. We want to get these topicals both into phase 1. We want to move the existing program into phase 2, and then bring our pain program into the clinic as well, probably in 2017.
Right. Okay.
So we've got a lot of clinical development on the schedule here that we want to move forward.
So at this meeting and at the JPM meeting, what kind of discussions are you having? What sort of companies you're trying to meet?
It's all across the board. We have a lot of discussions lined up, ranging from fundraising to commercialization partnerships to development partnerships, to helping us move some of these specific areas forward. So it's a full slate, really across the board, because we're very collaborative in the way that we look at this.
Right. Okay. And I mean, obviously the sort of the startup industry over the last 3, 4, 5 years, well, certainly 3 years, has had sort of, well, the sun has been shining. Mm-hmm. There are sort of clouds are now sort of gathering. I mean, what sort of sense? I mean, the mood music is it still optimistic, or a buzz, or do you think people are getting a bit more realistic?
There's some people all over the place, but I think generally people are pretty optimistic. I mean, the interest rate climate is not going to change that quickly, so I think public companies are still going to have access to good capital. We think, particularly because of the kinds of assets we're developing, there's a lot of specialized interest in those areas that we can access, and also partners are interested in these areas, and we're having some really good discussions about the appetite for these specific areas we're working on. I mean, I think you can appreciate, areas where we have a lot of unmet needs in autoimmunity, and chronic pain is a huge opening for us.
Right. Good. Well, Chuck, thanks for sort of stopping by and sharing the story.
Good to see you again, Mike.
Cheers. Yeah. Bye bye.